There's a quiet kind of death that's worse than the loud kind. Not a gunshot, not a scream, not the snap of bone or the collapse of lungs. This death whispers. It arrives in routine, in comfort, in the illusion that staying still is safer than moving with aim. This kind of death doesn't happen all at once. It comes slowly, a little bit more every day. Each time you hit snooze on the life you were meant to live. Each time you take the easier path instead of the right one. Each time you talk yourself out of the thing you know you're meant to do. This is the death of purpose. And once purpose dies, everything else rots with it. Your confidence, your energy, your joy, your reason to fight. And the worst part? No one will even notice. Because the world doesn't mourn those who die internally. It applauds the illusion. You'll get pats on the back, congratulations for doing what's expected. They'll call it success, stability, maturity. But inside, you'll know what you traded. You'll know what you left on the table. Because if you don't decide who you are, the world will. You'll be assigned a role, a function, a title. You'll be put into the machine, fed to the system, and you'll spend your life polishing pieces of someone else's dream while your own turns to dust in the back of your mind. Definiteness of purpose. It's not a strategy. It's not a tip. It's not something you try. It's the core of power itself. Everything you want, every life-altering transformation, every ounce of greatness that could ever be pulled from your potential starts there. Not with a wish, not with a list of goals, not with another half-baked plan that fizzles out in 2 weeks. It starts with a decision so violent, so absolute, that it tears the fog from your mind and replaces it with fire. It's the moment you stop asking the world who you are. It's the moment you stop waiting for signs, for timing, for support. It's the moment you stop browsing through life like it's a menu. And instead, you point at the thing you want, the thing you've been afraid to admit. And you say, that's mine. And I will move through fire to claim it. Most will never do this. They'll flirt with commitment. They'll dabble in their passions. They'll chase a dozen things halfway and catch none of them. And then they'll wonder why life feels so meaningless. It's because they never chose. They never locked in. They never dared to make a covenant with themselves and seal it with action. You have to understand, your mind is a weapon. But without a target, it turns on you. It becomes your enemy. It feeds you doubt, distraction, fear. Not because it hates you, but because you gave it nothing clear to follow. The human brain is a goal-seeking machine. It doesn't care whether the goal is greatness or destruction. It simply locks onto the most dominant signal and moves toward it. And if there is no dominant signal, it loops, it circles, it spirals. That's where most people live, in the spiral, going nowhere, but doing it fast. And every day they feel more tired, more disoriented, more uncertain about why they even exist. But when you pick a purpose, when you define it with such ruthless clarity that every cell in your body knows it, that's when things start to move. Your energy changes. Your habits begin to align. Your subconscious begins working for you, not against you. Doors appear that weren't there before. People show up who can help, but only after you declare. The right words come at the right time. Coincidences stop being random. Why? Because definiteness of purpose isn't just psychological, it's spiritual. When you align your mind, your words, your actions, and your identity around a single aim, the world cannot help but respond. It must respond. That doesn't mean it will be easy. Purpose doesn't remove struggle. Purpose removes hesitation. It doesn't take away the fight. It gives you a reason to swing. With purpose, every hit you take has meaning. Every scar becomes part of your mythos. Every setback becomes a test, not a sentence. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" And you start asking, "How can I use this to become stronger?" You stop blaming. You stop begging. You stop shrinking. And you become something else. A force. A presence. A signal that other people feel when you enter the room. They won't be able to explain it. They'll just say there's something different about you. Like you know something they don't. Like you've seen something they've only dreamed about. And they'll be right. Because when you have a definite purpose, truly have it, it changes how you move. You don't waste time. You don't chase approval. You don't talk about what you're going to do. You do it. And let your results speak in thunder. But that level of power has a price. You must sacrifice the comfort of indecision. You must kill the parts of yourself that feed on options. You must bury the fantasy that someday, someone will come along and show you who you're meant to be. No one's coming. No one's handing you a mission. You have to forge it. You have to choose it. And then you have to defend it. Every day. From the whispers that tell you to shrink. Because the moment you choose, the resistance begins. The tests begin. The losses begin. But so do the wins. So does the momentum. So does the awakening of every dormant part of you that's been waiting for a reason to rise. And once it starts, there is no going back. You'll look at the old version of you, the uncertain one, the one who questioned, who hoped, who drifted, and you won't even recognize them. They'll look like a ghost, like someone you buried. And you'll realize something terrifying and beautiful. That version of you was never real. It was just the shadow that existed before the fire was lit. So what now? You've heard the call. You've seen the consequences of drifting. You've felt the weight of a life lived without a central aim. There's no going back to sleep. You can't unhear this. You can't unknow it. And now, the question sits in front of you, unblinking, waiting. What is your purpose? What do you want so badly that you'd bleed for it? What goal are you willing to become a weapon for? What mission are you willing to let destroy your excuses? What are you here to build, change, conquer? Because until you answer that, you'll remain where you are, moving fast, going nowhere, dying quietly. But the moment you answer it with fire in your voice and conviction in your soul, the world starts to change. Not because it owes you anything, but because you finally stepped forward and owned yourself. And that changes everything. You've been lied to, told that you need to have it all figured out before you begin, told that you need the perfect plan, the perfect team, the perfect strategy, that without guarantees, you shouldn't even try, that if you don't see the whole road, you have no business taking the first step. And so, you wait, you research, you plan, you dream, but you don't move. And in that paralysis, the lie wins. It eats time, it eats hunger, it eats destiny. Because the truth, the brutal, liberating, fire-breathing truth, is this. It's not the perfection of your plan that matters. It's the clarity of your purpose. Plans are brittle. Plans can fail. Plans are nothing more than guesses with a name. But purpose Purpose is the spine. It's the unbreakable core. It's what survives when the plan burns, the map fades, and the world collapses on top of you. The person who wins is not the one with the most polished blueprint. It's the one who knows why they're here and refuses to leave without extracting what they came for. You see, most people spend their lives as architects of the hypothetical. They draw plans in the safety of imagination. They construct empires in their mind, but never lay a single brick in reality. They wait until they know everything and die knowing nothing. They confuse precision with purpose. They mistake perfection for power. And because they fear imperfection, they never create anything real. But the truth is, your plan will fail. Not once, not twice, over and over. Because that's what real progress looks like. Ugly, chaotic, defiant failure, followed by relentless adaptation. You weren't put here to memorize a script. You were put here to forge one with fire, sweat, and scars. You were born to respond, to bend, to break and rebuild, not to wait for someone to hand you the master plan. The most dangerous people in this world are not the ones with the most resources or the most polished vision. They're the ones with unshakable clarity about where they're going. They don't need guarantees. They don't need applause. They don't even need to be right on the first try. They just need a reason, and they'll carve the path with their bare hands. Clarity of purpose makes you unstoppable because it keeps you in motion even when the path disappears. It keeps you fighting when the tactics fail. It keeps you breathing when the world wants you suffocated in doubt. Perfection is a luxury. Purpose is a necessity. And if you cling to perfection, you'll starve while waiting for conditions that never come. The moment you decide to begin, the world will not ask for your credentials. It will demand your resilience. It will test the purity of your aim. It will rip apart every strategy that isn't forged in your own blood. And when that happens, if you're here for the plan, you'll quit. But if you're here for the purpose, you'll adapt. You'll evolve. You'll rebuild with stronger hands and clearer eyes. You'll become the kind of creature that cannot be stopped because you've already accepted that nothing will go according to plan. And yet, you go forward anyway. That's real power. That's what separates those who talk from those who leave a mark so deep the world never forgets them. What most call failure, the purposeful call feedback. What most call obstacles, the purposeful call fuel. What most call an ending, the purposeful call chapter 1. Because when you move with purpose, the map isn't what guides you. It's the flame inside your chest. And that flame doesn't care if the wind changes. It doesn't care if the path vanishes. It just keeps burning. And the fire spreads with every step you take. Understand this. Greatness doesn't come from flawless execution. It comes from relentless adaptation. It comes from moving forward when nothing is clear. No one believes in you. And everything you built just crumbled in your hands. You don't need a perfect plan. You need an unbreakable why. Because when you have that, you'll find a way. When the world says no, you'll pivot. When the resources are gone, you'll improvise. When everyone leaves, you'll keep going. Because you were never doing this for them in the first place. You were doing it because you must. Because something in you would rot if you didn't. Because something inside would die if you walked away. Perfection is what cowards worship from afar. Purpose is what warriors live and die for. And this world, This brutal, bloody, chaotic world doesn't need more perfect plans. It needs more people who are possessed by purpose. It needs more people who will crawl through glass, not because they have a detailed manual on how to win, but because their soul won't let them stop. It needs people who get up again, and again, and again. Not because it makes sense, but because they already decided, long ago, that quitting was not on the list of options. That's what purpose does. It makes you unreasonable, untouchable, immortal in the eyes of time. Because you didn't live to survive. You lived to create something that mattered, even if it cost you everything. So let go of the idea that you need to see the whole staircase. Take the damn step. Let go of the fantasy that everything has to be in order. Begin in chaos. Begin with what you have. Begin imperfectly, but begin with clarity. Because clarity of purpose gives birth to momentum, and momentum will take you further than perfection ever will. So stop waiting. Stop stalling. Stop trying to be sure. You will never be sure, but you can be certain. Certain of your direction, certain of your fire, certain of what you refuse to die without accomplishing. That's enough. That's more than enough. Now move. The plan can wait. The world cannot. They tell you to believe in yourself. They tell you to think positive, to visualize, to speak your goals out loud. But they never tell you why it matters. And they never tell you what happens when you don't. Let me tell you now, your mind is a machine. A relentless, powerful, obedient machine. It doesn't judge. It doesn't reason. It doesn't filter. It absorbs. And what you feed it, day after day, thought after thought, becomes who you are. Not who you say you are. Not who you wish you were. But who you train yourself to be. In silence. In repetition. When no one is watching. The subconscious mind is the engine behind everything. It's the quiet giant steering your behavior, shaping your habits, filtering your reality, setting your limits. It's not controlled by logic. It's not moved by reason. It responds to one thing: repetition backed by emotion. You want to change your life? You want to rewrite your story? You want to become something so sharp, so driven, so unstoppable that the world has no choice but to bow or bleed. Then you have to speak to the source, not with one pep talk, not with one vision board, not with a few goals written on a dusty notebook, but with daily war declarations, with thoughts soaked in obsession, with words screamed so often, so forcefully, so emotionally charged, that your subconscious has no choice but to submit. Understand this. Your subconscious doesn't care what's true. It only cares what's repeated. You can lie to it. You can feed it garbage, and it will take it in just the same. That's why most people are broken. Because they spend every day repeating thoughts of weakness, failure, guilt, and fear over and over again with emotion. They rehearse defeat. They recite limitations. They affirm powerlessness. And they wonder why they can't rise. It's because their subconscious already decided who they are. And it made that decision based on the signals it was given. Signals that were often unconscious, careless, and automatic. But now you know the truth. And that means you have a choice. You can reprogram the machine. You can hijack your mind. You can rip out the old code and burn it. But it will not be easy. It will take warfare-level repetition. You will have to say what you want to become so many times with such fire that the world might think you're delusional. Good. Let them. Because repetition is the path out of the pit. Not passive repetition, not bored, monotone affirmations, but charged repetition. Repetition with emotion, repetition with conviction, repetition with rage if necessary, repetition with tears in your eyes and your fist clenched like you're speaking to God himself. That's how you rewire the core. That's how you force the subconscious to listen, and you'll know when it's working. Because your behavior will change, not from effort, but from instinct. Your mind will start to reject old patterns. It will start to crave the path you've been feeding it. Suddenly, self-discipline won't feel like torture. Focus won't feel foreign. Winning won't feel like a dream. It'll feel inevitable. But this is where most people fail. They speak the words for a few days, maybe a week, but they don't believe them. They don't feel them. They don't back them with emotional fuel. And when the results don't come fast enough, they quit. They say, "This doesn't work." And their subconscious hears it. It logs it. And now the machine has new orders. This doesn't work. And so it doesn't. You cannot lie to your subconscious for long. It watches what you feel, not what you say. It listens to what you repeat, not what you momentarily desire. So the question becomes, what story are you telling yourself? Every morning, every night, every moment between your thoughts. What are you broadcasting? You can't just want the change. You have to install it. You have to engrave it into your nervous system. You have to declare it so many times, with so much emotional violence, that it becomes unchallenged truth in your mind. That's how warriors are made. Not by accident, not by talent, but by intentional, daily mental programming. Think of your mind like a battlefield. Every day, your old identity rises up with its army of excuses. And every day, you must slaughter it with thoughts of who you are becoming. This is not some soft self-help. This is psychological warfare. Every affirmation is a bullet. Every repetition is another swing of the sword. Every emotionally charged visualization is a scar carved into your subconscious until it finally surrenders. And when it does, the game changes. You stop needing motivation because identity takes over. And identity is the most powerful force on earth. You don't act like the person you wish you were. You act like the person your subconscious already believes you are. And if you've programmed it right, it believes you're a weapon. It believes you're inevitable. It believes you don't break. You evolve. But if you've programmed it wrong, if you fed it fear, failure, and indecision, then your subconscious will become a prison. It will keep you exactly where you are, no matter how bad you want to escape. So again, what are you repeating? Because repetition is not neutral. It is either forging you into steel or sedating you into silence. You must become a tyrant of your own mind. You must audit your inner language with the intensity of a general preparing for war. And when you find weak thoughts, kill them. When you hear doubt, drown it. When you feel hesitation, replace it instantly with a thought that aligns with who you choose to be. Do this long enough, and you will become unrecognizable, not just to others, but to your former self. You'll walk differently, think differently, make decisions with speed and clarity that terrifies the person you used to be. Because now the machine belongs to you. Because now the beast is programmed. Because now your identity has been carved not by circumstance, but by design. And the next time someone asks you how you became this way, you won't speak of luck. You won't speak of genius. You'll speak of repetition, of days spent feeding your subconscious the raw, bloody truth of your future, until it believed, until it obeyed, until it transformed you from within. And the transformation never stops, not because you need it to, but because you want it to. Because the repetition became ritual, the emotion became devotion, and the mind that once controlled you now kneels at your command. So the only question left is, what are you teaching your subconscious today? They talk about belief like it's a suggestion, like it's some soft, decorative virtue you put on your wall and glance at when things are going well. They treat it like a bumper sticker. Just have faith. Empty words, hollow tones, whispered by people who've never had to fight for anything. But real faith, the kind that moves the earth beneath your feet, the kind that pulls miracles from the ashes and drags dreams into the light. That kind of faith isn't fragile. It isn't polite. It isn't soft. It's violent. It's absolute. It's the battle cry of the soul when logic has run out, and all that's left is the fire that says, I will. I must. I already have. Because the truth, the one they don't tell you, is that your subconscious mind will not act until it's ordered to. And the only language it responds to with speed, with immediacy, with force, is faith. Not weak belief, not a fleeting hope, but total conviction. Faith that burns so hot, it scorches doubt before it takes shape. Faith that sees the outcome so vividly that the subconscious doesn't just believe, it obeys. Instantly, ruthlessly. It rearranges your chemistry. It rewires your behavior. It locks your instincts onto the path you've declared, because your declaration was real. And you know what the cost is? Certainty. In a world that worships doubt, that exalts indecision, that hands you 1,000 backup plans before you've even committed to your first move, certainty is rebellion. Faith is warfare. They'll call you delusional. They'll say you're unrealistic. They'll mock the way you speak about your future as if it's already carved into stone. Let them. They don't understand what it means to own a vision so deeply that your subconscious mind treats it like it's already happened. That's the kind of belief that overrides years of failure, that erases the hard wiring of poverty, trauma, shame, that pierces through generational fear like a spear made of fire. You want to know why people stay stuck? Because their belief is weak. Because they say the words, but they don't see the outcome. They whisper affirmations, but their hearts are filled with hesitation. And the subconscious listens to that. It hears the doubt. It registers the fear. And it says, not ready. So nothing moves. Nothing changes. And they call it fate. They say, maybe it wasn't meant to be. But the truth is, it was. They just didn't believe it hard enough for the system to activate. Because faith is the key. Faith is what tells the subconscious, go now. Make it real. Find the path. Pull in the resources. Destroy anything in the way. Faith is what tells the universe, I'm not waiting. I'm not wishing. I'm declaring. And that declaration sends a signal, not just out into the world, but inward, into every cell, every neural circuit, every layer of thought. And when all parts of you begin to align around that signal, you become a storm. You stop needing motivation. You stop chasing clarity. You stop looking for signs because you are the sign. You stop walking into rooms with your eyes on the ground. You start walking like someone who knows, not hopes. Someone who acts, not reacts. Someone whose soul got tired of waiting and decided to take over the damn controls. And the thing is, faith isn't about arrogance. It's about alignment. It's not pretending you have no fear. It's overriding fear because your vision is stronger than your emotion. It's not denying reality. It's reshaping it. Because your inner world is so unwavering, the outer world has no choice but to bend. This is the language the subconscious speaks. It doesn't speak in hesitation. It doesn't speak in maybe. It speaks in commands, issued through belief, written in repetition, sealed by emotion. You don't tell it, I hope I succeed. You tell it, I have already succeeded. Catch up, and it will. Because the subconscious doesn't understand time. It doesn't care about probability. It responds to the intensity of belief. So if you say you're powerful, but flinch at pressure, it will record the flinch, not the words. If you say you're destined for greatness, but feel inferior around winners, it will record the emotion, not the affirmation. But if you say you're inevitable, and you feel it, see it, know it, then your subconscious begins to work for you. It starts changing the way you move. It rejects distraction. It attracts opportunity. It begins to filter out anything that doesn't match your declaration. And this is the true superpower. This is the secret weapon behind legends. Not just the ability to act, but the ability to believe with such savage clarity that action becomes automatic. That's why some people rise and others sink. It's not about talent. It's not about luck. It's about alignment. The ones who rise are the ones whose inner voice doesn't whisper. It roars. They walk like warriors because they've trained their subconscious to follow orders. Not because they never fall, but because when they fall, they already see themselves standing again. That's the power of faith. It eliminates the lag between decision and action. It removes the gap. There is no more, should I? There is only, it's done. So if you're wondering why your life isn't moving, look closer. What do you really believe? Not what you say, what you feel, what you repeat, what your subconscious has recorded as truth. Because if that truth is soaked in fear, in doubt, in the trauma of your past, then nothing will change. No matter how many books you read, how many goals you set, how many mornings you try to start fresh. But if that truth is drenched in faith, if you fed your subconscious the same declaration every single day, backed with conviction, soaked with emotion, set on fire by vision, then it won't matter how dark things get. You'll move anyway. You'll rise anyway. You'll win anyway. Because your subconscious isn't waiting anymore. It's already executing. That's the threshold. That's the line between the wishful and the dangerous. And the moment you cross it, the moment your belief stops being optional and becomes law, you'll feel it. Like something ancient woke up inside you. Like you finally became the one you were always meant to be. And that's when it all begins. Not when you're ready. Not when it's perfect. But when your faith becomes stronger than your fear. Let me tell you the most terrifying truth you'll ever hear. Your mind will believe anything you tell it, if you say it enough. It doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter if it's logical. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to the world, or if it's a complete lie. The subconscious doesn't check facts. It doesn't debate. It doesn't negotiate. It simply records. Whatever you feed it, especially when it's soaked in emotion and repeated endlessly, becomes your truth. And that truth will sculpt your reality, whether you like it or not. You are not living your potential. You are living your programming. And your programming, it came from everywhere. From what your parents repeated when you were too young to reject it. From what the world told you when you were too desperate to question it. From every painful moment you replayed in your head until it became law. And now here you are, reacting, flinching, overthinking, sabotaging yourself at the last mile. Not because you're weak, but because your subconscious believes a script that no longer serves you. Understand this. Your subconscious cannot distinguish between a vivid imagination and a vivid reality. It does not care if the scenario is playing out in front of your eyes or just echoing through your thoughts. If you visualize failure, if you obsess over worst-case scenarios, if you relive trauma, insecurity, loss, fear, day after day, loop after loop, your subconscious locks it in. It turns your internal world into a mirror, and then it turns your mirror into your future. That's not superstition. That's neuroscience. That's how habits are formed. That's how identity is shaped. And that's why most people stay in cycles they hate, because they keep reinforcing them with repetition, and the subconscious doesn't know better. You want change? Then stop feeding the machine poison and expecting it to run clean. The thoughts you dwell on are not harmless. They're not just thoughts. They're blueprints. Blueprints for your next move, your next emotion, your next downfall, or your next awakening. And the only way to rewrite them is to take control of the message, to hijack the feed, to flood your subconscious with new instructions, deliberate, dominant, and emotional. Not empty affirmations, not weak phrases you read once and forget, but war declarations. Thoughts repeated until your inner world bends. Thoughts visualized until your identity shifts. Thoughts felt so deeply that your nervous system starts treating them like memories. You must become the author of your programming. Because if you don't write the script, someone else will. And they already have. That's why you hesitate before speaking. That's why you flinch before taking the risk. That's why you feel like greatness is for them and not for you. Because you were programmed by fear, by comparison, by scarcity. But now you know the truth. And once you know, you cannot unknow. From this point forward, every time you let a limiting belief pass through your mind unchecked, you are reinforcing it. You are choosing to strengthen the very thoughts that are strangling your potential. But every time you interrupt that thought, every time you replace it with a new one rooted in strength, in vision, in defiance, you are reclaiming territory. Repetition is not passive. It is war. A war between who you are and who you were trained to be. And this war is not fought once. It is fought every day. Every morning when the old voice whispers, "You can't," you answer with a louder voice, "Watch me." Every night when the fear returns and tells you to quit, you look it in the eye and say, "We don't quit. Not anymore." Every time your subconscious tries to drag you back into the familiar pit of mediocrity, you plant your feet, flood it with new thoughts, and remind it who owns this mind now. Do that long enough, and your subconscious will obey. It will stop resisting. It will start working for you. And that's when everything starts to shift. Not because your external world changed, but because your internal signals changed. Your subconscious doesn't care if you're a king or a coward. It will become whatever you command it to be, and it will begin to recreate your life to reflect that command. That's why you can't afford to be casual about what you think. You can't afford to entertain self-hatred, even for a second. You can't afford to joke about failure, speak in defeat, or visualize what you don't want. Because your subconscious doesn't understand sarcasm. It doesn't know when you're just venting. It only knows what you repeat with emotion, and it builds your life accordingly. So what are you repeating? What are you rehearsing? What thoughts are you running in the background every single day? Because that internal repetition, that loop you run while you drive, while you shower, while you lie awake at 2 a.m., that's the program. And that program is running your life. But you can change it. You can break it. You can rewrite the code. You can install a new identity, one rooted in strength, clarity, and purpose. But only if you feed it the truth relentlessly. Only if you stop waiting to feel ready and start repeating what you want until readiness is irrelevant. Only if you take the lie that's ruled you for years, rip it out by the roots, and hammer a new belief into your mind with repetition so intense it leaves scars. Because those scars, they become armor. Those thoughts, they become instincts. That new programming, it becomes your destiny. Not because the world changed, but because you finally took control of the signal. And from that day forward, you don't react to life. You write it. You broadcast it. You become it. Because you finally understand. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and repetition. So you better make damn sure that what you repeat is worth becoming. There's a reason most people never break through. A reason they stay trapped in the same cycles, reliving the same failures under different names. It's not because they lack talent, not because they lack time, not even because they lack opportunity. It's because they lack instruction. To themselves. They drift through life with a vague idea of what they want. They say, I just want to be successful. I want more. I want happiness. But the subconscious mind doesn't respond to vague. It doesn't move for maybe. It doesn't obey confusion. The subconscious is a soldier. It takes orders. But those orders must be clear, direct, emotional, and they must be repeated until they're carved into the bones of your identity. And that begins with one act. Writing it down. That's the doorway. That's the signal fire. That's the first move that separates the doers from the drifters. Until your purpose is on paper, it's a hallucination. A foggy dream with no spine. It floats in your mind like smoke, fading every time fear enters the room. But once you write it, physically with your hand, it becomes real. It becomes a command. The act of writing is not just expression, it's manifestation. It tells the subconscious, this is not just a wish, this is law. It moves your goal from imagination into intention, and intention is the beginning of all transformation. You want to know why your subconscious isn't obeying? Because you haven't given it clear orders. You've whispered ideas into the void and expected action. But the subconscious doesn't act on silence. It acts on focus, backed by emotion, reinforced by daily repetition. Writing it once isn't enough. You must write it over and over. You must read it aloud. You must speak it into the atmosphere like your life depends on it. Because it does. Every morning. every night, until your purpose is no longer something you think about. It's something you are. Because here's what they never told you. Your subconscious is listening at all times. Every word you speak, every doubt you entertain, every excuse you tolerate, it hears it, it records it, and it begins to shape your behavior to match what it hears most often. So when you write your purpose with clarity and intensity, when you repeat it until it burns, it becomes the new dominant signal. And that signal overrides the noise. It overrides fear. It overrides self-doubt. It becomes the filter through which you experience life. And suddenly, you stop chasing distractions. You stop engaging with things that don't serve the mission. You stop compromising with mediocrity. Why? Because your subconscious is now aligned. And when your subconscious is aligned, you become unstoppable. Not because you're trying harder, but because every part of you now expects to win. Every cell in your body expects progress. Every thought that doesn't serve your purpose gets rejected like poison. But this doesn't happen by accident. This doesn't happen through inspiration. It happens through ritual, through repetition, through writing the vision and making it plain. Do you know why most people never hit their goals? Because they never define them. They chase feelings, not facts. They pursue outcomes without structure. They get excited, but they never get specific. And specificity is what programs the subconscious. It's the difference between saying, "I want more money," and saying, "I will earn $250,000 in 12 months by building X, serving Y, and providing Z, because I am worthy of wealth, and I will not stop until it is done." Do you see the difference? The first is a wish. The second is a decree. You have to write your goal in a way that scares your comfort. You have to write it so clearly that it feels like prophecy. Not if, but when. Not maybe, but this is what's happening. And then you must say it every day, with fire. You must say it until the words stop sounding foreign. You must say it until the subconscious stops resisting. You must say it until the world starts responding. Not just in moments of motivation, not just when you feel good, but especially when you feel broken, especially when doubt comes crawling back, especially when the old programming tries to reclaim the throne. That's when you double down. That's when you speak louder. That's when you read the words you wrote until they become your weapon. Because your mind will serve one of two things: your programming or your past. And if you're not programming it daily, it's defaulting to the past, to failure, to shame, to limitation, to all the things you never chose, but accepted by silence. And silence is agreement. But writing your purpose and repeating it, that's rebellion. That's war against every lie that's ever been planted inside you. That's how you become a new creature, not by chance, but by command. This is the missing piece most never touch. They journal their emotions, but they never write their identity. They set goals, but they never declare them. They want change, but they don't speak the language of change. And that language is written, repetition, daily, deliberate, undeniable. So stop waiting. Stop hoping you'll remember what you're here to do. Write it, read it, repeat it. Burn it into your subconscious until there is no version of you that doubts it. Until your footsteps move faster. Until your voice sounds different. Until your presence speaks before you do. That's the power of written purpose. That's the power of repeated conviction. And once it takes hold, Once it embeds itself in the deepest chambers of your being, there is no going back. Not because you can't, but because you won't want to. So now you've heard the truth. Not the version sugar-coated for the masses, but the version built for warriors. 6 laws of the mind, 6 weapons, 6 keys that, if used together, will unlock a version of you the world has never seen. First, you learned that definiteness of purpose is the beginning of all power. Without a target, you're a wandering soul, drifting, distracted, disposable. The moment you decide what you truly want, the fog clears and the world begins to respond. Second, you are reminded that the plan doesn't have to be perfect. What matters is that your purpose is clear. The path will change. It always does. But your reason, that stays, that burns, that cuts through chaos like a blade. Third, you were shown the power of repetition and emotion, that your subconscious is a machine, obedient but unfiltered. Feed it weak thoughts, and it will build a weak life. But feed it power, charged, emotional, relentless, and it will rewire your identity from the ground up. Fourth, you saw how faith lights the fire, not weak hope, not fragile belief, but absolute conviction, the kind that makes your subconscious act immediately, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Now fifth, you understood the terrifying and liberating truth. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and repetition. It believes what it's told most often. Whether it's a lie or a declaration of destiny, that's your choice. And sixth, you were given the command. Write down your definite purpose and repeat it until your subconscious obeys. Because until your purpose is on paper, it's fiction. But when you write it, when you speak it, when you live it, it becomes law. These aren't suggestions. They're not tips. They're the foundations of personal warfare. And now you hold them. So the only question left is, what will you build with them? Because from this moment forward, you can never again say, I didn't know how. You do know how. And if you don't move now, then you've made your choice. But if you do, if you burn this into your bones and become the kind of soul who moves with clarity, with faith, with fire, then understand this. There will be no version of you that returns to the old life. Only the one who rewrote the code and became the storm.